And having that experience, not only being on the board, but also being involved in so many committees, Finance Committee, Reserve Committee. These are important committees that have taught me a lot prior to being on the board. Also, my background as a high school computer teacher and the business department chairperson. We had to do a lot of planning, we did budgeting, and we had to stay within our budget. So I would say my background as the head of the business department and also my prior experience on the board, I feel that is the most important thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Joe Brack, what sparked your interest in being considered for nomination to the Heritage Pines Board of Directors?
I have had friends ask me to run for the board over 4 years ago, and I kept putting it off. I was village president. I was involved with various committees. I was chairperson when we built Gazebo Park down here at the corner of Grand Club. I enjoy people. I want to do the best I can for the community. And I think that things can be done better than they have been. Last year was a tough year for this community. It seemed like every board meeting we had, they had a special session to approve emergency budgets. I still don't think they have a description of what an emergency is. I would also like to say that, all of us up here are running for the board, but we're not the ones that can make the biggest change in this community. It's you, the residents, that have to get involved as well. If you don't like what we're doing, you've got to step up and do your part in committees and talking to the board members.
Thank you. Ken Nelson, what would you do to make certain that the rules of this community are followed?
It's a darn good question, because I'm not very rule-orientated. Sometimes I think we have too many rules here that stop us from being good at things. But what would I do? There's really not too much I can do. However, we have a management group here that are assigned that responsibility. They have a duty to make sure the rules are followed, and I would make sure that they do it, the people that we are paid to do that job. Board of directors are not here to enforce rules, but they are here to make sure the people that we hire do get those rules done correctly. That's pretty much all I can say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. The second theme for this evening is responsibilities of the Board of Directors. Linda McCann. If elected to the board, what would you attempt to do in the next 2 years that were not accomplished in the past 2 years?
Well, we have a lot of projects that we have started and we haven't finished. In my mind, the kitchen should have been the #1 item where we started instead of it being one of the last. Thank you. Management decided to start with the bar, but it should have been the kitchen. The conditions that they are working under in there it's poor. And we need to move forward with the kitchen. We also are just starting to move forward now with the renovations of the PAC, the Magnolia Room, and all the other rooms that have not been completed. On the reserve, we have the golf course renovation. We also have the roads. The roads will start next year. Some are in major need of repair. Others, where they are less trafficked, they are not as bad. I think I mentioned the main ones, but we need to get moving on quite a few of the projects. And I'm just looking forward to continuing to be on the board so that I can be part of moving these projects forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Joe Brack. As a new board member, how much importance would you place on the input and suggestions of appointed committees in making board decisions, and to whom should they report, the board or the GM?
I think you have to look at the scope of the committee first. We have committees that are set up where they have pretty much total autonomy. We have other committees that report to various members of the board, and we have other committees that report to management. I personally think that we need to look at what the committees are recommending. I also think that we need to broaden the scope of the people serving on the committees.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Val Page, what would your goals and objectives for the Heritage Pines Board of Directors should you be elected?
My first goal is to find a competent general manager for the association. My other goals are getting the streets done, getting the golf course. We're kind of behind on doing the things at the golf course. We're supposed to have been started a couple of years ago. I think we have a really good start on having most of our policies and procedures in place. We have just finished working on the dress code revision. We've got a committee working on the rest of the rules and regulations, working on updating those. Basically, I would like to make sure that we don't have assessments going up in the future. I want to keep our costs down. I think we need to make sure that we keep our building maintained and also the other amenities maintained.
Thank you, Val. Jim Kelly, what are your thoughts on the working relationship between the GM and the board?
The GM works for Heritage Pines. Heritage Pines is the board of directors are the employer of the GM, and so what the GM needs to be doing is bringing to the board certain suggestions, direction that he gets from his people that work for him, but the board has the ultimate decision. The GM cannot just run rampant and make this his own private club. There needs to be lots of input from the community, and I think that can be done through the committees. The committee should come up with what we want to do and where we want to go, and then present that to the board. And the board, the committee has already gotten all the input from the community. So the GM has to work for the board of directors. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Ken Nelson, describe your understanding of how a community association works.
Okay, that's not too bad, that one. In fact, I was kind of a little surprised about this place about 2 years ago when we did that McGladrey report, and they kind of told us how homeowner associations and community associations like this work. In my mind, before I read that report and looked into it, in fact, I was on one of their committees to request information. I always thought that this place should run as a profit center. Always thought that. I couldn't understand why, and I look at it as a business, I couldn't understand why we are not looking at it as a business and making money. We're losing money, and I couldn't understand that. And then McGladrey gave us that insight of how the homeowners associations in Florida and all over this country work. and they gave us these guidelines of how much each operation should be subsidized by homeowners. And that was very enlightening to me, and since then, that's one of the reasons I got involved in this, because they gave us kind of breakdowns of how much food, I'm good on this one, food and beverage should lose, or the golf course should lose, or how much we should pay for the maintenance of the tennis courts, and so on and so forth. So now my kind of view is that we are now not just for profit, but we are an amenity-based organization. And an amenity-based organization has to pay for out of homeowner dues. And so now I kind of go along with that. However, I still believe we have to limit how much each amenity costs. We can't just run rampant, so your dues go up and up and up. She just told me I got to get off the stage here. But anyway, like I say, my focus is always keeping your $175 either down or at least at that, and that's my focus. But at the same time, I believe amenities have to be subsidized in all ways, shape, and form by the community.
Thank you, Ken. Jim Kelly, what is the main difference between our operating funds and our reserve fund?
The operating fund would be a zero-based budget where we have X amount of expenses each year, and so then our dues are set at that. The reserve fund is taken from when we have additional money that isn't part of the zero-based budgeting. We put it into a reserve fund for things that need to have capital expenditures that take more money. The road improvement, the improvements and maintenance of the building, the improvements on the golf course, those would come out of reserve funds in my mind, where the operating capital is the amount that it takes to run the organization day to day.
Thank you, Jim. Ken Nelson, what is your experience? What experience are you bringing to the board as far as control and leadership?
Control and leadership. Well, I guess if you look a little bit at my background, I worked for 25 years in the Postal Service, and I was a postmaster of a large postal facility with 220 employees and an $11 million budget. So I think that my background tells me I have experience in leadership in that field. Another experience I might refer to is the same in my bio. I have a restaurant business in Vail, Colorado with my son, and it's a very large restaurant, so I believe I have experience in dealing with economic issues of food and beverage. What was the other part of that question?
What do you bring as far as control and leadership?
Also, I guess I would have to refer to that I've been on these various committees and working with them. In fact, I worked with Linda for a year on golf utilization. So I guess that's another experience I can transfer into leadership as we work together on these things. The same with the Finance Committee, working with those people, or the same with the Men's Golf Association. As Vice President, I have to make decisions and deal with all sorts of problems in that area. So I guess that's another form of leadership and control.
Thank you, Ken. Linda McCann, in your opinion, is there a conflict of interest being on the Heritage Pines Board of Directors, Maintain Village Committee, Board, or as a board standing committee? Yes, I will. In your opinion, is there a conflict of interest being on the HPCA Board, Maintain Village Committee, Board, or a board standing committee?
Well, being a board member, I am on several board standing committees. I am on the Finance Committee. I'm a liaison to the Reserve Committee. I don't see that as a conflict. As far as being